I welcome
Okay.
everybody. Today I have a really special guest, someone that I've been wanting to meet for decades. His name's Dan Shaw, and he hails from Oregon in the United States. And his work is very unique. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what you're doing now. Are you still very active chasing rainbows and vortexes and yeah.
Very much so. And it's funny coming from you that I'm communicating with researchers all over the world because I've also wanted to connect with you for and admired your work for years. So I'm really looking forward to your set of questions and your unique take on the vortexes, ley lines, and the Earth grids.
Well, it's interesting how we met. I got an email from Dan out of the blue, which was a delight because I was talking about a really old, I've had this model for about, I don't know, 20 years. And it's been everyone I know in Australia's wanted it. And it was all damaged because I let the children play with it and they completely squashed it. So I had to pull it apart and sticky tape it. So I was talking about this while I was doing a documentary on I was doing a doco on Mary Magdalene in 1969. Mary Magdalene, the Pope Pius VI announced that Mary Magdalene is not a prostitute. So I was just doing a rant on vortexes and Mary Magdalene and the 1400-year lie from Pope Gregory the Great when they announced she was a prostitute. So it was a very strange rant, but somehow Dan was watching and said, "Look, I've actually got the original. I can send you the original one." So Dan sent me 10 of these. So this is sort of how it comes, something like that. So you can go onto Dan's website called vortex.com. But my apologies, Dan, because I thought that the website didn't exist anymore. I should have done the
Oh,
re
no worries. But vortexmaps.com.
vortexmaps.com. Yeah,
Yeah.
so as for those that are interested in sacred sites, I think the most famous one is called the Becker-Hagen, which is what this one was based on. So this one that you just showed us was based on one of my most favorite shapes of all time called the Rhombic Triacontahedron. And the reason why it's sacred is that if you look at any diamond here, there's 30 of these faces, but the ratio of the short axis to the long axis is to 1.618. So it's in the golden ratio, but the problem is it's not a Platonic or Archimedean because there's actually two spheres. There's a sphere that goes around these points here, but at this node here, it's inside the sphere. So it's called a Catalan. Um, yeah, so I was interested, Dan, when I was talking about this. I know that there's 60 edges to that shape, and when I don't know whose notes it was, but I was reading not 60 sacred sites, but 62 vertices, or there were 62 sacred sites, and it put me off. Can I show you the diagrams that?
Sure,
Yeah,
sure,
so I'm just
sure.
going to
But
share the screen. Yeah,
your listeners are going to be highly advanced, I'm sure. And this is, your take is so special. But let me just back up just a little bit
yeah,
and set a little more framework.
yeah,
So what we're looking at is the energy structure of the Earth.
yeah,
So the idea is that there's these platonic and other geometric solids embedded within the Earth, and
yeah,
that this is actually a very useful model because we actually see geologic features at these points where the geometric solids touch
yeah,
the surface of a sphere or the spheroid of the Earth.
yeah,
So there are a number of different geometric models for the Earth. As you mentioned
yeah,
before we started rolling, you could think of the tetrahedron inside the Earth. In fact,
yeah. This,
your listeners, your viewers may be aware of the tetrahedron inside the Earth from the work of David Hoagland, the mission on Mars, because when you inscribe that tetrahedron in the Earth, point up as you did, then the other points come out at 19.47 south latitude. And of
that's
course,
right.
if you invert that to make the star tetrahedron, then one point is at the South Pole, and the other points there come out at 19.47 north latitude. And you find many interesting geologic features at those latitudes, including the Hawaiian island chain, and that is a stable hotspot with the oceanic crust moving across that stable hotspot in the
Right.
core of the Earth. So that's one example of how that tetrahedral geometry seems a very useful model for the geology of the Earth. So just kind of jumping all the way to the end,
Yeah.
uh, if I can, what we're looking at seems to be the shape of energy, just as your art of numbers talks about the actual shape of numbers. It seems that the everything in creation has a geometry to it, and some visionaries have been able to recognize this geometric nature of the Earth, and chief among those are Bill Becker and Beth Hagens,
Yeah.
and they developed this Earth star globe that I published that you were showing. And that is one way of projecting, as any flat map has to be projected. Oh, you're upside down.
Oh, upside
Uh,
down.
the globe has to be projected onto a flat map, and any projection is going to have certain distortions. So different projections have different advantages and disadvantages. The We know that the most common projection that we see of the Earth often distorts the size of the continents.
Right.
So this projection of the 30 diamond shaped faces,
Yeah.
the
This one.
rhombic triacontahedron,
Yeah.
that map projection there, that was chosen by Bill Becker and Beth Hagens when they designed the Earth star globe. What they're showing is the combination, the dual platonic solids of the icosahedron and the dodecahedron, those nest so that one has points where the other has faces. Those are dual platonic solids. So this is one way of
They're the,
showing,
so they're the
right? This
two
is
shapes there. Yeah.
one way of showing these dual platonic solids is with that rhombic tricontahedron. That one happens to be a good projection
Mm.
to fold up and assemble.
Yeah.
So that was one of the reasons Bill Becker chose that. But it does have some very special properties. That diamond, that ROM, as you describe, it has that phi proportion in it, and it is made up of these four triangles, those three, four, five triangles. And so it already has this symmetry in it. And then because of the shape, it's got the two-fold symmetry in it. It's got the five-fold symmetry in it and the six-fold symmetry in it. It's a very beautiful shape.
Right. Just for some people always ask, how do we get that? How do we actually get this rhombic triaconta? Because it's golden ratio. So when I showed the icosadodeca, those two shapes, if we could fuse them together as one shape, we get a what's called one of the 13 Archimedeans. So at any nodal point here, we have to give these a name. So at this node here, we could say it's triangle pent, triangle pent. So I call this 3535 because at any node, it's always 3535. So to morph to go from this to that, we have to Magic Spider goes inside the internally and it says I'm going to join all the face centers, the center of each face from inside. So when you join this point to that point to that point to that point from inside, Dan's saying we get a diamond, that fundamental diamond shape, but it's in the golden ratio. So that's why we need to study the five platonic solids. I just wanted to show, I just wanted to share my screen and show some of those other versions of the maps.
Oh,
So
great,
I'll just
great. And I'll
share
just
screen. Yep. Comment
let
on that.
me add that the models that you're showing are made with a geometric assembly toy called the Zoom tool, if you're
That's
looking
right.
to get one for yourself.
Yeah, and just while we're on the zone tool, I'll show this because this was one of my questions because we've got all these geometric configurations, but zone tool allows us, like I can pull this out, so I can pull this out and you can see the end point there and it sticks in quite well into there. But one of my questions I was going to ask you before I share screen is that um, if at any point on the world, let's just say this is Maralinga or Australia, the center of Australia, there must be a corresponding point going through the Earth called the antipodes, the antipodal points. I actually don't know much about the antipodes, but I was fascinated with the world news at the moment. So, say if there's a war going on in Ukraine and Russia or Israel and Gaza, if someone's say bombing Gaza at the moment or any country, is all that impact on the point affecting the opposite nodal point on the planet? Like, does it mean that the whole world is interconnected through these sacred energy points?
That's a very good way of saying it, and the hard science is definitely there for the antipodes.
Yep,
And reason being that surface seismic waves that travel across the surface of the Earth,
right,
S waves, those will collide at the antipode. So the antipode is the opposite point. In geography on the globe, you'd have the North Pole and the South Pole as
yeah,
the poster
the,
boys of
the,
antipodes there. And so when you do draw that line through the core of the Earth there and you come out the other side, that can be important. And when I do an analysis of a location, I will go to one of these very simple web pages I've built to
right,
actually give me the antipode. Of course, for the latitude, you can just put a negative sign in front of whatever your latitude is.
yes,
But because we set that prime meridian at Greenwich, and
yeah,
we go east is negative and west is positive, then it just adds this level of complication. So I've got a simple web page for that where I can
right.
put in
Oh,
the
good,
and calculate the antipode. Greenwich is 31 degrees from the Great Pyramid, and there's definite reason to believe that the Great Pyramid is an ancient prime meridian. So again, when I analyze a location, I have a web page where I can also do that calculation very easily, and I can
right,
happy to share the link with your viewers so that you can put in the longitude and find out what your corrected longitude is for
right,
the based on the Great Pyramid. And
yeah,
again, it's about 31 degrees different. So I happen to be at 122 west, approximately 122 west longitude here, where I am. I'm a little more than an hour north of Mount Shasta, California. I'm in
right,
Southern Oregon. And
okay,
so when I take that 122 and I subtract the 31, I'm darn close to 90 degrees
oh,
from the prime meridian of the Great Pyramid, which
mm,
is to say that if we were to inscribe a square in the Earth, I would be square to the Great Pyramid longitude.
right. It's interesting that 31-degree difference from Greenwich to the prime meridian. It's close to the golden rectangle. If I had a golden rectangle, let's say that
Mm,
this is the golden rectangle, even though it's A4, but that diagonal there is
mm,
just under 32 degrees. So there's a important axial point
mm,
that's
mm,
in the golden rectangle. And the reason why I showed this shape here is if you look at the nodes, you'll see a triangle. There's a triangle there, pentagram there, pentagram, triangle. So really, this is what's inside this shape here. This is called the icosidodeca that makes the triaconta. So I always like to look internally what's going on inside these shapes.
mm.
I'll just quickly, I'll do a share screen. Just want to
Beautiful.
check it's all working.
Sure, sure. And
So
I'll say a
share
few words if I
screen.
may, just to
Yep.
for viewers who may just be trying to catch up. There are basically five platonic solids where the faces are all identical. And those are the tetrahedron, the octahedron, the dodecahedron, the icosahedron, and the cube. Those
Yep.
are the platonic solids, so-called. And what we're looking at with these more complex solids, these are often called Archimedean solids.
Right. That's
Some of them. So just for folks to catch up. So the tetrahedron is a dual of itself. The cube is a dual of itself. And then the icosa and dodeca, those are duals.
okay. So first of all, the one, just tell me if you can. Oh, this is a small diagram. I can't show that. I just want to show that.
Yeah, I
Tell
might
me
have
if
a
this.
better one of
Tell me if
those,
you
but
can.
go
If
ahead.
this is enlarged, can you see that's an enlarged image on your end?
Oh, I can see good.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
enlarged. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So so for this is just because I'm from Australia and I've got an audience in Australia. Um, the main meridian that goes through Australia is from Byron Bay here on the east coast all the way to the west coast. So it's this line here, but it's intersected at 90 degrees through South Australia at this point here. But we've been told so if pyramid in Egypt is called grid point one, this is called grid point 44. We know it as Wilpena pound, but on some of the maps that I see, it's not called Wilpena pound. They call it Maralinga, which is where they did an atomic test site, which is near Wilpena pound. Is there, do you have any information? Because this is considered the heart center of Australia, because most of our original people here they say that Uluru, the Red Rock, is not the heart of Australia. We're all told that the center of Australian energy is Uluru, which is above that intersection. But the
Hmm.
real secret is that it's below in the Flinders Range called Wilpena Pound. So I was just wondering if you had any information
Sure,
on
sure.
that.
Let me just
Yeah,
give you your viewers the full background here.
yeah,
So what you're looking at is Google Earth,
yeah.
and there's a free download of Google Earth for your desktop computer. It's
Oh,
not the website version of Google Maps, but a free download that you can do. And then uh, all kinds of people and organizations provide these sets of data points for Google Earth. Those are usually called KML or KMZ files,
yeah,
uh, keyhole keyhole markup language files. And so you can get from vortexmaps.com, you can get this set of points, geometric points, and you can use your own version of Google Earth to map the Earth grid. So
right.
what you're seeing here is the complete set of all the platonic solids all overlaid here. This
Mm,
is, you have to look pretty closely at this to see which lines are those white rhombs or diamonds,
yes.
and the white diamonds that encompass Australia there. And you do notice a beautiful, I don't know what that promontory is up at the center, uh, the north there, but
Oh, here, that's
uh,
in the Gulf of
yeah, it's
Gulf of Carpentaria, which I've actually
right.
been there once in my 20s. I never knew about sacred sites, but I ended up living in New for 2 years with Aboriginal people between Torres Strait in the Torres Straits here, and to get home because I lived for 2 years with no money, just living with the tribes, and to get home I had to work on a prawn trawler, and we ended up here in the Gulf. So somehow I ended up there not knowing where I was, and
So as I follow that line to the southwest there, it hits that point very beautifully.
yes, that's it. Yes.
Not south, but southwest.
Yeah.
In fact, and it's a little complex. Maybe I
Oh,
need to bring up my own images. But
yeah.
if you follow the white rhomb line to the southwest,
Southwest. Oh, this way?
and you end up with this grid point. There you go. You end
Yeah.
up with this. First of all, it passes through that beautiful promontory, and then you end up there at a point which is commonly known as Hurricane Alley. So you definitely get
Oh,
some vortex going on
yeah.
there. But just in terms of the grid point there, we it is generally recognized for us now as Wilpena pound.
I'll show
But you
Wilpena pound here. Here's
but
Wilpena
you
pound. This is
beautiful, beautiful energetic feature. But what's important to remember is that these grid lines, these are not really pencil thin lines. It is a useful model, but you want to think of these lines, especially the global lines,
yeah.
as being 100 miles wide, not pencil thin, and
Ah,
that these are probably not lines at all, but they're probably spirals. Yes, and they're undulating and they're expanding and contracting, and they're alive and conscious God.
yeah.
So to think of them as these pencil thin lines, accuracy, yes, it's important and it's very persuasive. Accuracy is, but it's also important kind of the mythological quality of these things. So accuracy isn't everything,
Right.
and our model is only as good as it is useful.
Do you have
So
any theory
mhm,
about why they would bomb this sacred site? That if either Wilpena Pound or Maralinga is considered grid point 44, but did they have the intel to the reason that they would do an atomic test is that are they trying to destroy or disassociate these vortexes by bombing these sites or something? Do you have any view on that? Why?
your questions are very insightful. It does seem that there's a lot of nuclear material, radioactive material at these sites, both in the ground and refineries and reactors, and a lot of military involvement at these sites.
Hmm.
And there was this author Bruce Cathy from New Zealand, who was an airline pilot who was had UFO sightings and who ended up drawing a grid of his UFO map of his UFO sightings, and he found that they did occur on a grid.
Yes.
It was a cubic grid for Bruce Cathy. So, not the Becker-Hagen's grid, but a cubical grid. And he had a principle that the nuclear weapons could only be exploded at a certain point in the grid. So it does
So that
all
means this
tie
whole
together.
myth of when countries talk about we're going to unload our nuclear weapons on you, that's actually a fear-based distortion because there's no such thing as dropping a bomb. It has to be triggered through the sacred geometrical knowledge, which they all know in advance. Like you can't just drop a bomb and it explodes. It has to be triggered. I understand that when I think Bruce Cathy, because I met Bruce Cathy and I have all his books behind me when he wrote Harmonic 33. But he was basically saying at his conference that before they dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, they had to circle around for a long time to get the trigonometry correct at midday to get the angle
Wow.
right. So there's a lot of science and mathematics involved in all of this understanding. And okay, I might just show a few other maps while I've got you. Um, so there's the face of Mars that you were talking about.
19.47 Cydonia is at that magic latitude. I forget if it's north or south.
So 19.47 is when we look at the star tetrahedron. Is that like the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn, these parallel lines going
It does seem to be real
close?
close.
Yeah, it's very
And
close to the tropics, yeah.
I do have a web page at my site which talks about that tetrahedral geometry because it does occur on other planets.
So is that a
The
pyramid as well and the face? Are we looking at the face on Mars and the pyramid on Mars, or is it? I'm not very
You're
sure.
you're looking at the so-called face,
Yeah.
and I don't take issue with Richard Hoagland in the least, but
Okay.
I do favor the geometric analysis of the late Fred O. Mills. His geometric analysis of the monuments on Mars, to my mind, it does supersede the Hoagland analysis, and I think you can find that only in a few places, including my website. So there you have a nice start hedron showing the inscribed in a sphere.
So there's the 19.47 degrees, which are critical in understanding the star tetrahedron. When we look at all this, there's eight cubes, or there's eight vertices. Um, when I was looking at what are the sacred sites at these points, most of them seem to be volcanoes. They're not actually cities like the Sun Pyramid in Mexico. They're actually volcanoes.
Mhm,
Is that does that
mhm,
intrigue you in any way? That's all volcanic activity, or
For sure, there's the view that the this geometry does tend to be like a volcanic upwelling, where another geometry might have more of a watery component.
so? Can you see
Yeah.
all these names here? They're all
Oh,
volcanoes.
that's a beautiful image.
I only just found it, but you got the Cook Islands, it's a volcanic island,
Oh yeah.
Hawaii, Brazil, Sahara Desert, Mariana Islands. So, and I was just surprised. I thought it's all underwater. They're not all underwater, but that tells us a lot that when volcanic activity is going on, that there's something being activated in Gaia, in the earth. She's speaking to us in a sense.
I have a favorite way of saying that, which is that energy has shape and shape has energy. So
Hmm.
you can read books like Pyramid Power by Patrick Flanagan
Yes.
or Shape Power which I believe is Dan Davison.
Right.
And so energy has shape,
Mm.
and shape has energy.
And in my work, shape stores memory. Like when we look at how the fact that we can communicate right now is because the atomic structure of the silicon chip is basically star tetrahedral, which is so efficient that it stores energy or memory. It reminds me when Buddha had his enlightenment, we're talking about 2,500 years ago at the time of Pythagoras. Buddha, when he tried to describe the fundamental subatomic particle, he gave it a name. He called it Acta Kalapis, like this shape on the screen. Acta means eight, and Kalapis means atom. So when he described the smallest possible particle, it was something that was eight-sided, like this star tetrahedron, like or cubic consciousness. So we know that the cube is efficient in storing energy, memory. Yeah, so shape is very important in trying to understand the world grids. And I think there was another one. I'm looking for the Buckminster Fuller one.
Sure, we want to get to Buckminster Fuller,
Well, we got this one.
but
This is the main one that is most
okay.
popular is the Becker-Hagen. I just wanted to show that this is the
Well, we
fusion
mm,
of icosadodeca that makes all these kind of diamond shapes. So there's the
well,
point in Australia. I wanted to ask you when we go back to the prime meridian through Cairo, through Egypt, the fact that they shifted it to the UK, wherever that is, the UK. Um, do we need to go back to the prime meridian? Are we in distortion when the British colonialists tried to rule the world and said we're going to shift the prime meridian from Africa to the UK? Did that put us in a distortion in any way, or everything's fine in your?
oh, I love your questions, but hold there for just a
Yeah,
second because what you're seeing here is actually one of these projections
yeah.
which distributes the distortion. This one distributes the distortion to the poles. I think you can see that the
Oh,
South
yes,
Pole is quite
yes,
distorted. And
yes.
of course, that point on Australia, that's not quite right, right?
That's
So
very
this
good.
is
Yeah,
this
very
is
good.
not the best projection for the Earth grid. Don't rely on this one. So
Okay.
I just wanted to point that out. So
Yeah.
now to your question, the the Great Pyramid is very near the point which was arbitrarily uh, chosen to anchor the Becker-Hagen's projection. Now, I say arbitrarily. It does seem that that was the prime meridian, so it's a good choice. But the actual point should be noted is farther north than that. It's in the Nile Delta, and there's probably a temple there that was submerged.
Mm,
Uh, so when we numbered the Earth grid points,
mm,
we added, and I say we, but I do mean Bill Becker and Beth Higgins. Although
yeah.
there's a history that goes back to Ivan Sanderson through a group of three Russian researchers to through Chris Bird to Becker and Higgins, and of course on
Mm,
into many researchers in the present. But we still want to get to the Buckminster Fuller
yeah.
too, but we were kind of coming up on our time. So just to say, first of all, to your question, it's possible that the British usurped the prime meridian of the Earth and somehow a little bit twisted the energy, kind of similar to how the popes inserted themselves into our 10-month calendar and
Mm,
added July and August after Julius and Augustus and threw off December and it's no longer the 10th month,
that's right.
right? So there's been a perversion of symbols that were once pure, such as the swastika.
Mhm.
So
But this means
so
all the world's time, everything, this modern technology, this evolving world, is all based on Greenwich UK time, which means they've mastered all the energy in a way. Is that, or am I just exaggerating that in a way?
I think it is a usurpation of energy But I just want to carry that a little farther and say that it's entirely possible that the Great Pyramid itself was a kind of usurpation and control frequency.
Oh, very interesting. Another question, just a spontaneous question while you're talking. When I'm looking at all these lines, Um, two questions about it. We're on Earth observing these geometrical intersections, but are there portals above, say, Israel, Gaza right now? And also, are there tunnels below these points? Are these wars in Ukraine, Gaza, etc.? Are we really trying to fight to control the portals in space and also in the tunnels? That's another big question. Is there an inner Earth? Is there a whole labyrinth of tunnels? Are we just on the surface? Are we the bridge between two worlds, the above and the below? What would be your thought on that? Or is that all conspiracy to you?
Wow. Well, that's just the cliffhanger for our next
Yeah,
40 minutes.
we'll
Uh,
reserve that for our next chat.
but those are all perfectly fair questions, perfectly
Yeah.
fair questions. But there was a lot wrapped up in there to untangle. But
Yeah.
I like to jump right to the end, and
Okay.
I have a little bit of an elevator pitch, and that's this, if you'll
Okay.
allow me.
Yeah, we've still got about 15 minutes, so you can go.
Great, great, great. So
I'll stop
let's let
sharing
me
for a while. Yeah,
let
here
me
we
go
are.
here. I th I believe that you and I are on perfectly aligned paths where you're using number and geometry in uh, in the form of alchemy, where the end goal is enlightenment, perfection of consciousness, physical immortality, and ascension for
Yeah.
me, personal and planetary ascension. So the fact that you mentioned Buddha's enlightenment for me is perfect segue to go right to the end. The why, the what does it matter? And for me, this is about there's an infinite amount of energy available everywhere, all the time, for our physical healing, for our psychic opening, and for harmonizing the planet. So, what I'm doing is a geomancy, a kind of earth magic that is, to my mind, it's a subset of alchemy, and all the same principles
Mhm.
apply. So, the great experiment is really ourselves, and the lead that we're refining into gold
Mm. So
is
we are the
is
prime meridian. We
ourselves.
wherever we are the prime meridian. That
So be it.
that's
So be it.
yeah. Well,
And
this is
people
great.
sometimes ask me,
Yeah.
uh, uh, what is the most powerful vortex on the planet?
That's a good
There's
question. Yes.
there's a two-part answer to that. And first is you don't have to go anywhere exotic. There's an infinite amount of energy available right where you are. And
Beautiful.
secondly, the most powerful vortex on the planet is your own heart. In a very literal sense, your heart is an electromagnetic vortex.
Yeah. That's beautiful because in our heart, I mean, the first organ to form in the human body when we're an embryo after the geometry collapse is the torus. So that center point, that point of implosion, the suction towards the center was the organ to was the heart, not the brain. The brain didn't form first. That's what most people believe, but the heart. So this is always about a return to source, about return to center, and I love that. I mean, you're so it's beautiful that a discussion on sacred geometry and vortex and geography can lead back to consciousness and awareness and simplicity because we're just research like you're a detective, you're called the Vortex Detective, and I'm a mathematical monk looking to explain where we came from, who are we, where we came from. So I use numbers in the sense that it's a timeless, unchangeable logic because everything else will change, like calendars. When you talked about the Julian calendar, it changed. But the one thing that won't change is harmonics or mathematics. So I see sacred mathematics as a pathway to follow the breadcrumbs. So, but it's interesting because if there was no patterns, if there was no geometrical patterns arising with all these sacred sites, we wouldn't have a discussion to be talking about. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Hmm. Um,
yeah, keep going. I
this,
mean, I
I
love the
will
way you talk and think. Yeah,
let's go. Let's go in two places next. Let's go to Buckminster Fuller,
yeah,
and then to why vortexes tend to be 54 miles wide.
yeah. I'll try and find his map. Keep talking. I'll just share the
Sure,
screen.
sure. So, folks may be familiar with Buckminster Fuller. He was one of the geometric greats. He is credited with the geodesic dome
Yeah,
that you see everywhere. And he developed a map which he called the Dymaxion map, and it differs in some important ways, and it's similar in some important ways to the Earth star globe.
yep.
So it's nice to draw those distinctions.
I know I put it in here. Because that was one of my first questions. No, I just for some
Not
reason
seeing it.
I'm not
Yeah,
seeing it.
but I
That's
can
okay. We
describe it pretty thorough.
um
So, maybe Google it. So the Dymaxion globe, Buckminster Fuller designed as 20 triangles. I would go so far as to say the first geometric map is actually the Great Pyramid.
right.
It's very fair to say that the pyramid represents the northern hemisphere, that each of the four sides represents the four sides of the Earth, and
Yeah,
then you actually have the latitudes going up from the perimeter to the apex there in the pole. And then people often theorize about an inverted pyramid below the pyramid that would
mm,
represent the southern hemisphere. And of course, you're likely familiar with all the divine proportions and dimensions of the pyramid and how much it does actually represent. The pyramid does actually or sorry, the perimeter does actually represent the equator.
that's right. So the scale rate, if we blew up this pyramid to the size of the northern hemisphere, the factor, the scaling rate to enlarge it would be 1 is to 43,200. And as you know, that's the number of seconds in a day. There are 86,400 seconds in a night and day, but just in a day, a 12-hour period, that harmonic, if we reduce 43,200, drop the zeros, we get harmonic 432. So the pyramid is talking about harmonic numbers and time and space. So yeah,
Wow. Well, thanks for backing me up in that. You are amazing. So, we could say that the pyramid itself, the Great Pyramid, is one of the first, if not the first, geometric map. Uh, Eventually, along comes Buckminster Fuller. He's very fully immersed in geometry. He realizes that by using triangles, that he can distribute the distortion of a projection, which we talked about earlier. Now, Buckminster Fuller's objectives, Bucky's objectives, were twofold at least. He wanted to show the land masses unbroken. He wanted the edges of the triangles where the distortion would occur to be in the oceans, the less important.
right.
So, and then he wanted to show population and temperature. So
Was
the Dymaxion map, 20 triangles, it distributes the projection to the edges of the triangles, shows population and temperature.
it
And
wasn't
it's
the
there.
cube octahedron, wasn't this shape here the vector, the what he called the vector equilibrium? It had only 8 triangles with 6 squares. But so is that a different map? Because I thought the map of Bucky, when you unfold this cube octahedron, he mapped the world with it, but I'm not familiar with that 20 triangle one.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, it's not a cube octa. Although
Not that.
if
Okay.
you bring up the image of the Dymaxion, it's all triangles.
Right.
And he received the first cartographic patent.
That's right. Yes.
Uh,
So he set the
s-
seed to inquire about the distribution of sacred sites around the planet geometrically. Would he be the first?
no, I wouldn't say so. No. Again, goes back to Ivan Sanderson, who recognized the 12 Devil's Triangles, and then this group of three Russian researchers who were able to fill in the other points, and then eventually Bill Becker and Beth Higgins get credit for what you could think of as being the struts that would make that structure rigid if it were
Mhm.
actually
Right.
a physical structure. So, uh, point is that the Becker-Hagen's globe now, it's also based on triangles. You could say that it actually better distributes the distortion of the projection because there's more triangles. But
Right.
then in this the projection, which is the Earth star globe, again, that was a different shape again because they chose those rhombic, 30 rhombic or diamond shaped sides more for the ease of assembly.
Yes. Okay. And before I cut you off, before you were talking about the pyramid, I think it was either half the perimeter of the base had a correspondence with either the radius of the Earth, when this was enlarged to the size of the northern hemisphere. There was
Well,
something in the perimeter. It was either half the perimeter or the full perimeter equated to the diameter of the globe. There was something encoded.
yeah,
I
you
forget
totally
exactly.
nailed it. No,
Yeah.
you nailed it, Jane. You know exactly. You know better than I do.
But
It's that the dimensions of the Great Pyramid actually do represent the Earth, so it's no stretch to say that it could be essentially used as thought of as a geometric map, and so we're following in that tradition, if
right.
you will.
Do you think the pyramid today, there's so much overemphasis on the Great Pyramid of Giza. They do call it Giza, but David Sarita calls it Giza. But
Okay.
do you think it's a defunct symbol now? Like we're all obsessed about the mathematics of the pyramid, but it's kind of like an inactive volcano or something. Do you still feel it's a prominent structure for the whole planet, or we need to not overemphasize the importance of the pyramid?
Oh, oh. Well, let me answer in this way. That brings this up. There. You could think of the earth as being a divine conscious being, which it is, and that it too is evolving towards its own inevitable ascension and carrying us along. So you could think of, well, we've got all these different geometric models of the earth. We've got the cube, we've got the tetrahedron. What's going on? Are they all concurrent? But you could think of the Earth as evolving from these simpler Platonic solids into its energy or etheric body evolving to these more elaborate, maybe stellated or Archimedean solids.
Mm, yes.
So that's something that it brings up. So there are other models of the geometry of the Earth that also seem to work very well. For example, if you use Avebury in England as the number one point. As if you
Mm,
key in the whole geometry to Avebury, I understand that
mm.
you get some very productive results.
Well, I haven't thought of that. That's a great idea. Yes. Wow.
So if you like, we can go towards why do vortexes tend to be 54 miles wide and
Yes. Yeah.
multiples of 54?
Yeah.
So again, we want to be thinking in three dimensions. We want to be thinking of that torus and not just like lines on the planet. But if you, the acoustic analogy for these energy points seems very productive and useful. So uh, if you think of frequency being a function of length, so that you have, let's say, a violin string and it's of a certain length, and you pluck that string, it's going to vibrate at a certain frequency.
Right.
Well, you could think of length as distance, actually. And so if you were to ask, what is the fundamental frequency of the Earth? Well, you'd kind of have two choices. The equator is actually fat. The Earth is not a sphere, but it's an oblate or fat spheroid. It's wider at the waist. So the dimension around the equator is actually longer than the dimensions around the poles. The
Right.
polar circumference, if you were to draw an equator or a great circle through the poles, then it turns out that you get a distance. I can't recall the exact distance,
Mhm.
which is a near exact multiple of 27. In other
Mm,
words, 27 seems to be one of the lowest factor of the polar circumference. Now, you probably understand this better than I do, Jane, but
mm,
if we take that polar circumference as a fundamental frequency, then we would expect to find these nodes, just like you would with a vibrating string,
mm,
at fractions of that fundamental frequency. And it sure seems like we do because one of those dimensions of that 3, 4, 5 triangle of the Becker-Hagen's Earth star globe is 2160, 2,160 miles. And
yeah.
you can see that that is a multiple of 54. And so it does turn out
Yep.
that
All these distances were 2,160. I think that either the axis or the edge length
well,
was
I'd have to bring
2,001.
up that image to be sure I'm correct in telling you which edge it is.
Yeah.
So, let me
You,
see
you
if I can
wrote it
do that
on you
actually.
wrote it on here somewhere, but just while I remember,
Yeah.
so you've got oh no, it's 2,600 miles is this the ABC point here is 2,600. I thought it was 2,160. But just while
Well, there is a 2-1. There's because you have spherical geometry,
yeah,
other geometries, but one of the dimensions is 1440
yeah,
and another is
thank you.
2160. And you
That's
can see
it.
the 2160 is a multiple. And if you give me a second here, I can bring up that image, I expect.
Okay. Yeah, but talking about 27, you reminded me Bruce Cathy because you mentioned Bruce Cathy, a colleague of mine. Bruce Cathy said that there are 24 hours in a day. We'll call that Earth time. But when talking
Hmm.
about the nuclear bombs, to drop a bomb, they worked only in cosmic time, where he said it's 27 hours in a day. So to make that magic happen with nuclear detonation, they didn't work on 24 hours in a day. They worked on partitioning the day into 27. And that relationship of 24 hours to 27 hours, which is like a circadian rhythm. So 27 hours was the key to advanced physics, he was saying, or he called it cosmic time. But 27 is, as you know, the Rubik's cube. So um, if we take a cube, we can divide that into that Rubik's cube of 27 little cubelets, 9 plus 9 plus 9. And from that 27 is that sequence, like in music theory, when we double a hertz, we call it a harmonic. So as we keep doubling 27, we get the next octave. So we go 27, 54, which is going back to the 54 miles. Double that is 108, double that is 216, which is the harmonic of 2,160 Earth grid miles. So it just goes on and on. But 27 is a big number to me. It's one of the most sacred uh, numbers in all of mathematics because it hooks in with the 24 as an 8 to 9 ratio. So if we had a square, let's just say that this square was like graph paper and it was 9 units. No, like the chessboard, it's 8 by 8. So imagine 64 little squares. To square the circle to make heaven and earth equal, I want a circle that's also the same perimeter as this 8 by 8. And it works out that I have to go to a 9 by 9 grid where the circle just cuts in on these four corners. So the ratio of 8 to 9, which is 24 to 27, literally
Uh,
cubes the sphere, makes the cube and the sphere harmonically equal. And the only way to do that is that the diameter of the circle to get to the 8 to 9 is a function of the golden ratio. So only the 1.618 ratio, the golden ratio, can make heaven and earth equal. But it all goes back to this 27. So for some reason, when you said 27, it is so fundamental in everything I know. So can you go a little bit more explaining that 54 mile or that, yeah, go.
sure, sure, love to, but I
And then
just
we'll
want to
finish,
say,
and then you can conclude, we'll come to a conclusion soon. So just add a bit more about the 54 mile, then we'll come to a conclusion.
okay. So, first of all, let me say I'm so grateful for the Art of Number book that you send me across the world. and the beautiful inscription in it. Really, I treasure that. So thank you for that. And
No, thank you. Yes.
I had been pondering this question, and this is a digression. I had been pondering a question about why this numerologist that I'd known had been adding up their numbers,
Hmm.
such as my birth year, 1964, to reduce it to a single number,
Yes.
where that came from, and if that was some kind of numerology, if that was mathematics. And I opened up your book there, and there was my answer, Art of Number, Volume 1. So, and that was,
Well,
I had a,
24 becomes dominant in that digital compression, reducing big numbers to single digits, which is like the valence of an electron. We're looking at the outer shell, which carries the memory of the whole atom. But anyway, 24 comes up as the compression of the Fibonacci sequence. And if we can look at prime numbers, 24 repeating patterns. So 24 keeps popping up, but we need to index it with the 27 or the 54 miles. It's a sacred ratio anyway.
mm,
But look,
mm,
you've been such a great inspiration for me. I've been wanting to meet you for years, and I just think it's so amazing that we can do this and chat. And yeah, so do you have any final thoughts? How can people contact you if they want to know more about your books and videos?
sure. Well, I'm at vortexmaps.com. The email address is energy, ENERGY, at vortexmaps.com. And I will answer all emails, and I will send your viewers a free ebook to download, and I'll send them US vortexes 54 miles wide.
Beautiful. Yes.
And I invite all your viewers to contact me. It's been a just profound pleasure to connect with you in this way.
Well, thank you. When we post this, and we often get a lot of feedback, if we get really good responses and lots of questions, can I invite you back for another discussion? I've got so many questions. I only got through half my questions, but I think we could talk for hours. So maybe I think there's an ongoing series here. So thank you, Dan, for your time, and I look forward to reconnecting. Your gem. Thank you.